Welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kathy Nelson. I'm the CEO and founder of the Photo Managers. And every month we have for a number of years now, and you can find all these on our YouTube channel, which Kim, now that I remind you, will go drop that in the chat. So if you want to see past career advice, where I ask the same 5 questions, and it's just been so much fun. It's just getting more fun, especially as we expand the Photo Managers from all over the world. And so it is a pleasure for me to welcome Natasha Lee to our Career Advice from a Pro. She is from South Africa. She has a fascinating story that she will share with you. And we had the privilege of actually meeting Natasha at our annual conference in Orlando this past April. So it makes such a difference when the world becomes even smaller and we all get to actually hug each other and, know that how tall we are and, and just have that time together connecting on topics that we're all very passionate about. And it's a worldwide phenomenon, right? We all care deeply about photo stories. And I think that's what makes this conversation so fun. So that's enough for me. Natasha, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then I'll take you through the 5 questions I always ask everybody, but we want to hear from you first.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks so much for everybody for joining. I just absolutely love being part of the Photo Managers and having this platform and, being able to just share and find my tribe of people who do what I do, love what I do, and we get to chat and learn from each other, which is great. So yes, as Kathy says, my name's Natasha Lee and I'm from Durban, South Africa. And I've been a photo book designer for the last 18 years. I absolutely love that my job, I get to tell people stories through looking at their photos and presenting them in beautiful ways in handcrafted photo books. And I absolutely I've got quite a creative eye, and I just love piecing the photos together and putting them together in a way which really, really enhances the stories that they want to share. And I'm also quite excited to be interviewed with the kind of theme of pioneering tonight, because I kind of feel like in my background and where I've come from, I definitely have broken new ground in many ways. I left South Africa in 1992 after I studied teaching, and I headed for the UK, where I spent 4 years teaching and traveling all over Europe, and it was absolutely fascinating. But I had seen a photo way back when I was a child of Hong Kong, and I was just gripped by these neon lights and just, how absolutely different it was to the place that I grew up in. And I knew that I just wanted to go to Asia, and I hadn't met any Asians or many Asians while I was traveling in the UK and Europe. So I thought, okay, what better way to do that than pick myself up and go to Asia and do something there. And I'm sure to meet Asians, which very fortunately I did. And I actually met my husband, was one of my first students. I taught him English in Korea. And I ended up, basically finding what I was going to do by traveling to Korea. I kind of think amazing. I'm jumping into your first question, Kathy.
No, that's okay. This is fascinating. I'm thrilled. I didn't know that part about Hong Kong. I traveled to Hong Kong anyway. I had an opportunity to go through Asia, and I was in Beijing and Hong Kong, and it is like, if you're from certainly from the US as well too. It just was like, I'm still speechless in a way about how different it is, right? But in the busyness and all the people and things. So I didn't realize that. So you made it from Hong Kong to Korea.
Well, I saw the photo of Hong Kong, and I first went to Korea. That's the place that I could find a job. Yeah, from the UK. When I was applying for teaching jobs, the Korea came up first. So I went with a friend of mine, Yvonne, and off we arrived in Korea. And believe you me, in 1995, we were like one of 2,000 foreigners. So there weren't many foreigners there. There certainly wasn't a lot of English. And we really had to sort of find our way around and and really discover, it was fantastic. For me, I love cultural difference. I love learning things. I love seeing things which are different to where we've come from, and everything was different. The landscape, the culture, the traditions, and I really just, absolutely loved it. One thing that has followed me all my life, though, has been my obsession with photos. So, from a very young age, I was the child who enjoyed scrapbooking their diary, writing where they had been, collecting all the ephemera and making sure I had tickets and programs and all bits and pieces like that. And when I traveled, not most, but a lot of my money had to be saved to pay for the developing of photos. And, I definitely can tell you about photo labs in London and photo labs in Korea. And when there was the jump from the 6x4s to the 5x7s, and, as different styles and things became popular in the photo industry, because I'd just always been obsessed with photographers. But in 2003, my husband and I got married, and we got married in South Africa. And then we went back to Korea, and we had been living there. And I came across the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And that was basically a photo book, which back in those days, they called them lay flat or flush mount albums. And they were actually discovered or patented. The making of these was patented by an Italian company called Graphi Studio. And at that time, they had a patent that covered Europe, the States, and maybe a few other areas, but not Asia. So Asia had got onto this and started making these lay flat photo books, and I came across them for the first time. And I had my photos that I had taken in South Africa, and I now wanted this awesome album that I had never before seen in my life. And of course, people there and photographers and binders, and they said, no. The way it works over here is you have a photo shoot prior to your wedding, because they wanted everything to be perfect, makeup, set, everything. And then you get an album as part of the package. You can't give your photos and have an album. Well, they don't know me, because I was going to have that album with my photos. So I actually brought it with me today. This is actually the book that I had made in Korea with my album, with my photos from my South African wedding. And you can see we had a very unusual wedding. I don't know if you can see these, but it's this sort of cross-cultural Korean, get married in a traditional Zulu village in Africa type wedding. And I worked together with the binders and the print labs and basically discovered how the whole industry worked. And I said to my husband, if we go back to South Africa, we are introducing this concept. And of course, that happened. My husband apprenticed to learn how to make the albums. And we used our life savings, bought the machinery, bought everything, put it in a container, and went to South Africa to now open this business. And back in the day, I remember I had to learn how to use Photoshop using Korean printed books, because this was back in the day of Yahoo and the fledgling internet, and there wasn't very much.
So what year was this again? That
2003.
I just thought that long ago. When you really think, I mean, we think that we've been using digital photography and making since forever, right? But 2003, you were introducing that concept for the first time to South Africa, and you had just discovered it in Korea, right? That's amazing. Yeah. Yes,
that's right. Yeah. So I came back to South Africa all excited, and I thought everyone is going to just freak out when they see this album of mine. And we immediately went to bridal shows, and then became the first hurdle of a pioneer. When you find something and you try to introduce it to people that haven't seen it or used it, or you come up with a lot of resistance. And one of the first things one has to do is educate people. And the problem at the time was, in South Africa, no one shot digital. It was too expensive. They all shot negative. So now the negatives would need to be scanned in order to make it digital to then design the photo books. So our first challenge was now to try and convince people that they should spend money and scan what they had shot in negatives. And also educating clients is, it's time consuming and you don't make money during that process. So it was quite a difficult beginning, to be honest. And now I feel like, photo management and photo organizing, although in America, you guys have been doing it for quite a long time. I'm the first certified photo manager in South Africa because people don't really know about this industry here as an established industry.
Right. I mean, it's amazing all the things that you just told us about. I mean, so many questions, but just in terms of the fact that you were a pioneer, that you brought the technology of making photo books to South Africa, which really, and so the process of that, in some ways, you were probably doing photo organizing or photo management, not even having a name for it, right? If a client brought you their negatives and you got them to scan them to become, then did you have to, part of the process was you putting the story together for them instead of like the drop in, click and drop that people have done here quite a bit?
Yes, definitely. So when we first started, we realized that we needed to partner with photographers because that was going to be the way that we could make a good business, because one photographer would do 5 or 6 weddings per month. And that would then mean we would get, that many orders from each person, as opposed to targeting the brides or the public themselves. And also that is the way the industry was packaged. So it was just a matter of working together with those photographers. And then, yes, as you mentioned, people then also wanted to do it for themselves. But in South Africa, that sort of came about we got a DIY software for the first time in 2013, just to give you sort of a time frame. But there were a couple of other companies that did that before us. Once we pioneered the introduction to South Africa, and then quick on the uptake were photographic labs, labs that already had that as part of their service. They now then began to pursue also offering photo books and albums. And then very quickly, a lot of players entered the market. And, I always value your philosophy at the Photo Managers, which is the rising tide lifts all boats. So for me, I was frustrated when we initially bought the product in, and it was very expensive because the raw materials were expensive. The time was, we spent a lot of time on each product. So it was great that as it became more and more widely spread, more and more people could now share their memories using photo books. So, that was good.
Let's just talk for a minute just about that common denominator that I think just permeates all cultures, right? Is that deep care about the stories, right? The photos and the stories. Would you agree that, that the clients that cared about that, right? Is it what is it about that they care about, right? What is it that they are willing to invest that money and learn that?
Well, I kind of keep going back to the wedding market because it really was a big market for us. And, being a South African, you may know that South Africa has a very, very complex history, especially with different kinds of cultures all having to live and be together in a different way from 1994 when we became a democracy for the first time. And what I absolutely loved about it was suddenly we were doing weddings from all different cultures. So in my city, the Zulu African culture is the predominant culture. And then we also have the largest number of Indian people outside of India. So I suddenly got to see Hindu weddings, Muslim weddings, African weddings, and all the different things that they do. They have traditions which begin before the weddings, where they paint ornate mendi on their hands, and they have functions called umumbeso. And it was just incredible that people were similar in the sense that they were celebrating their unions, but obviously they were doing it in such different ways.
And that your enthusiasm for describing those different cultures right off the bat. We always say to people, if you're thinking about becoming a photo organizer, a photo manager, that you have to have, there's 3 things that we've learned, and we say this now, this is kind of new, but we say it a lot. I say it a lot these days, but there's 3 things that you need to have. And the first one is a lifelong learner. a person who really likes to learn. The second one, though, is curiosity. If you're a person who is curious, right, and engage and enjoys learning about new cultures, and so your way of just describing that explains to me why you're so successful, why this is the right fit for you, right? Because I could feel your enthusiasm for just seeing those weddings of all those different cultures. And I wanted to sit next to you and look at those photo books as well, just by who I am as a person. I just find that fascinating. So, so take us through that next part of the story, which I know is a painful part, is where what happened to your business, and then how you found the photo managers at this point, and that you're joining us today as far as career advice here.
Okay. Yes. So, yeah, we ran our business for 18 years. And I think one of the biggest things which would have hit a lot of people that are on our call today, and globally it affected everybody, and that was COVID. So COVID arrived, and weddings all just ground to a halt. You weren't allowed to have functions. You couldn't, you couldn't meet, and really, it took months and months before we were allowed to do anything in South Africa. They were pretty stringent in many ways. And suddenly, my husband, we had nothing to feed our families with. And we had to scramble around and think quickly on our feet. And one of the plus sides of COVID for us was that in South Africa, data costs can be quite expensive. And immediately, a lot of the data partners came to the party and said, if you have a home line with in my case, for example, I had a 10 meg line speed, they then upped it to 50 megs, complimentary for a period of a few months, because they realized that suddenly everybody was stuck in their homes and the only way to connect was to be online. And really that, it did us a good service in the sense that it shoved South Africa and forced them to get more online. And I then pivoted to offer predominantly training courses online. I began to then, do photo book design courses, Canva design courses. And I had been looking around online at people who would be curious and searching terms like photo organizing and photo chaos and, messy photos, disorganized, and very quickly came across what was at the time the APO, the Association of Professional Photo Organizers, and then it became the Photo Manager. And I just knew, oh my gosh, here is a place which I could do what you said, Kathy, lifelong learning. I needed to now up my skill set so that I could run courses, do this whole process remotely, and help people. And the good thing was nobody could go anywhere. So when you made an appointment with someone and you said, okay, right, we're going to organize your photos, they weren't going outside because they weren't allowed. So they stayed at home. And the first 3 or 4 weeks for me was very productive in that sense. I managed to organize photos for people and run courses and become and really intensified my learning and came, joined the photo management community back in that time.
Yeah. So tell us, so the questions I love to always ask are, what is it that you love about your job?
What do I love? Gosh, I absolutely love the stories and the different kinds of stories that I come across and get help to tell. So I've been involved with telling stories like, for example, the progression of money that Zimbabwe has had. I mean, you don't even understand, Google this or have a look at this, but they moved from a currency that had very few zeros to one that had gazillion zeros. And what a client that I worked with had collected absolutely every type of currency that Zimbabwe had put together. And because we owned our own factory, we actually handcrafted a book which suspended the money notes in the pages. And that was fascinating. Another example was proposals where the ring is embedded in the photo book.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so you kind of get to the last page and it's smooth, but the ring was placed in there. And then another client I had, I love working with corporate clients because they do events, they do team building, they do all those kinds of things. And this company that I worked with had gone to Mauritius on a team building, and they'd had a carnival. I mean, this was big. They shipped over things to build floats. It was just the most incredible event. And for that project, we actually embedded musical chips into the books so that when you opened the book, the music of the carnival actually played. So, just telling stories like that was just incredible. I just love every kind of story. Lately, we've been doing lots of family histories. I went down a road of discovering my own family's history back to my mom's relatives in the Netherlands. And I love doing those kinds of books with family trees. I do feel it's quite important to put some writing into some of the photo books if you can. If it's going to stop you from doing it, then don't worry about it. Just as long as, just do the book then. But if you can, if you are not there to explain or to tell the person what's in your book, let the book do it itself. So I try to encourage my clients to, for example, when it's a family's history, just write a small paragraph at the beginning of each decade, or, depending on how much they are able to get involved. But I love that, putting a little bit of the story in there so that the photos are not only just there themselves.
All right. So the next question I always ask you then, because I think it's important, as what is the least favorite part of what you do?
Okay, I think owning one's own business, the thing is that one always has to be the jack of all trades, from the bookkeeper to the marketer, to the copywriter, to the social media manager. And I find that sometimes quite frustrating that, one wants to concentrate on what you're good at, but you don't have that kind of luxury. Before my business was destroyed, I think I forgot to mention that.
I didn't know if you purposely skipped that.
No.
Okay, no, that's important. Okay.
Yeah. So after COVID, and we managed to get through that, then a year or so later, unfortunately, we had hectic riots and looting in our city, and over 40,000 businesses were destroyed. And ours, unfortunately, was burnt to the ground. There was nothing left. And very sadly, because of COVID, we had only had limited insurance left on our property. And we couldn't, we basically couldn't rebuild the company. So we had to retrench the staff that we had. And then together with that retrenchment came having to do all those tasks myself again, because I was now just, individually employed. So that would be part of the job that I don't really enjoy. And then I think also, just being a business owner, never being sure of your monthly income. I would love to know that I had a certain amount coming in each month, and that isn't the case. And then there are some tasks which are more monotonous than others. Like, for example, scanning. I know people love it, but I have to be in a certain mood, and I'm definitely in the mood for it sometimes. Sometimes I just love the monotony of it and the fact that I don't have to apply any creative juices, but sometimes it's a bit tedious.
I can see, just your personality, right? You're probably put on headsets or some kind of music and can be in the zone. Otherwise, you're I'm always amazed by your story, that your enthusiasm though still. I think, we could put Natasha Resiliently under here as part of your name, just because the resiliency of having a business burned to the ground. Also, many times when Natasha joins us for our training meetings, the lights will flicker and she'll say, "Oh, our internet, we're on rolling blackouts." And I just know, certainly here in the US, most of us, and probably many of the people that are on this call from around the world, we don't have rolling blackouts at this point. We may come to that with the weather extremes, who knows? But really, I'm pretty confident that my internet's going to be on and my electricity will be on, unless a big storm comes through or something. And then everybody gets very upset if, after like a day of no air conditioning or something, right? So anyway, I just, your story about that just reminds us also of, the world is a different place, right? And not everybody has these kind of, but the ability to start a business, doing photo management, photo organizing, making photo books for people is something that can happen worldwide. It's just fascinating in a lot of ways, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you find your clients there in a country where you're a pioneer? Nobody, I mean, we're still very much pioneering here, but nothing like what, like you say, like what you're doing. There's, most people know they need our help at this point, if anything, but.
Yes. Okay. So finding clients. So for the photo books and things like that, initially we started off with things like bridal fairs, and we targeted what we thought would be ideal clients. Like I mentioned, the photographers who would give us more than one album per month. And then referral was, a very close second to that. So once you've at least done a small number of books, you then are able to get a lot more work on referral. So it's quite a good idea to have quite a stringent referral policy, either that just get used to asking each client for a referral, that because every client, they'll say something and it's amazing. And then you just think, oh, I wish I had that, we'll ask them for it. And then if they're not able to do that, because it's quite a lot of work on their part, just make it really easy for them, so send them a Facebook review link, or send them a LinkedIn review, or Google review, request for Google review. And then in some cases you can say, oh, do you mind if I just write down what you've said? And then you actually just, transcribe what they say, and then send it to them and say, is this an accurate description of what you said? Because the referral really does speak very loudly. And then networking, especially in my city, people really like to do business with people that they know. So I attend 2 active women's networking groups per month, and I have got, thousands of rands of business from that. Obviously, one also needs a website.
Link your website there into the chat there, Kim, if you want to, so people can check out Natasha's website. So go ahead. Yep.
So a website is really important. And then especially, for example, in my case, where people, my company offers South Africans the opportunity to design their own photo books on my site. And that was really incredible, that after my factory burnt down, I was immediately contacted by competitors who, wanted to see ways in which I could work together with them, because obviously I've now got an eye for the industry. I've got experience. I know what I'm looking for. And I was very quickly able to identify a partner, go and purchase my unique leathers and fabrics, and then work together with them to fulfill orders, which still had the same look and feel as my original company. But unfortunately, they've actually taken me further than if I had been doing it on our own, because to be honest, we were really struggling to afford, as a South African company, international software costs, because a lot of the software that allows public to design on platforms is done on a per album base. So they charge like commission on each order. And when we are sitting in a currency of rands, and you're paying pounds or dollars, it makes it extremely expensive. So fortunately for me, the partner that I now have has afforded me a website with everything that's supported. I have an online support team. I've got production.
And where are the books printed then? So if I went online and create a book through your website.
Yes, in South Africa.
It's printed in South Africa. Okay, yep.
Yes, yes. That's great. So we don't ship overseas. Yeah. We don't, we just service the South African market. And personally, as a photo book designer, I will design for clients anywhere. So if someone's based in Europe, if they're based in the UK, the US, Australia, New Zealand, I'll design the books for them, and either I'll ask them if they have a preferred supplier in their area, or fortunately with the photo managers network, I can reach out to photo managers in those respective areas and find out which are reputable companies, and make sure that I design 90% of my time using Canva, which I'm just, by the way, an absolute Canva fanatic.
You should. You need to submit a talk for conference. Oh, we should get you to do a Canva webinar for us. But go ahead.
Yes. I actually offered that to Isabel. I said I'm very keen.
Okay.
And then I send the design and get the photo book order fulfilled in that country. And then the lastly, but which is something which is a bit, it's the SEO and targeted advertising. You know, when you do have an online design tool like I do, in order to appear in searches, etc., I do need to do a bit more work along those lines to get more clients.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. So what the last question I always ask too is how has being a member of the Photo Managers helped your business?
Wow. Okay. So, you know, there's a lot of things. I mentioned earlier that I basically found my tribe, you know, that when I stood up at my networking meeting and said, hey, guys, you're not going to believe it. I'm going to Florida. You know, I'm so excited. I actually can't believe it. I'm going to meet a whole bunch of people who get as excited as me about photos, history, metadata, sorting, software, scanning, cameras, you know, slides. So yes, one of the biggest things was, you know, just meeting like-minded people, and having gone to the actual conference, the physical, in-person conference,
Right.
you know, just to meet people like Kathy and Isabel and many others that I had met online before I went and met them in person. And then to leave that conference with new friends, you know, I just so appreciate it. I have to just shout out to Ellen. She's just, you know, I absolutely adore her from the Netherlands. And we just, you know, sat next to each other at a couple of different events. And I just love her style and how she does work. And then also I actually did, I don't know where I had written this in my notes to mention, but an important thing for me is to have a mentor. And, you know, there's different ways of having a mentor. I know that the Photo Managers offers some kind of mentor-mentee thing. But in my case, I consider Casey from Miss Freddie my mentor. I studied her course. I went on her small group. She runs different courses. She runs courses for photo managers or people that want to be a photo manager, start from scratch. And then she ran a unique group where you already had a photo business and you wanted to take it to a different level, and learn her method. And, you know, that was very, very valuable for me to have been put in touch with her and learn her method. And what else? And I think I said earlier as well, it's just the ethos, you know, the rising tide, and, you know, just, you know, being kind, finding people that are kind, willing to help. If I can't figure out a problem, we talked about curiosity. We are never, ever, ever going to know the answer to all of these photo management issues that come up. And it's really just about knowing that we can ask someone in the group, and, you know, either get advice and learn, because we can learn quicker than our clients can learn, because this is our game. So they can, you know, we can find the solution for them, and then either do it ourselves or outsource it to partners and people we can collaborate with.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and I love that you grasp that the rising tide lifts all boats. And it's so true. The third one we say in terms of success is also a willingness to try, fail, try again, you know, a willingness to Google an answer, ask for help, or look at a YouTube video or things like that. Those three components, for anybody that's here on the call wondering if they should become a photo manager, we'd love to welcome you to our community. But those are three things that, you know, Natasha clearly, without being prompted, comes up just the way she's describing her business. It's such a meaningful career. And but it does take that tenacity and that willingness to that curiosity and things. If people have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We have plenty of time to answer any questions that you have for Natasha at this point. And also, I think Kim will drop, if you are unfamiliar with Save Your Photos Month, that's a month-long program that we have starting in September. We have mini classes taught by some of the folks I can see on the call here today. That it's all free, and it's really about helping you preserve and save your family memories before a disaster strikes or something, but also around the importance of your legacy, telling your stories, different new things to technology. So you can register for that as well. But if we have any questions, so far not.
Just mentioning
Oh yeah, go ahead.
disasters like you've just mentioned. South Africa, gosh, you've got to say, we're quite a passionate country and group of people, and we really do go through so many things here. We also had, devastating floods that hit our province, and that prompted people to really think, oh my gosh, if I run out of the house, if the house is getting washed away, which happened to hundreds. We had, unfortunately, 500 people died in our city at floods in April last year. And it really was, it was just really terrible. And in my very close area, a number of people died and several people lost their homes. And when I'm attending different networking groups and things like that, I just ask people, please, are your photos safe? If you drop your phone, if it's damaged, if it's stolen, if it's, something happens to it, are your photos safe? Because I would freak out if that happened to me. But, not everyone's as obsessed with their photos. But and one of the top tips and one of my favorite workflows, because there's so many different workflows, but in South Africa, Apple products are quite expensive. So the most common workflow I come across is a iPhone PC combination. And one thing, if you've got your Microsoft subscription, you have a 1 terabyte OneDrive free cloud storage. So when I go to networking meetings, I ask people in the meetings, are your photos from your phone safely backed up? And then the second question is, do you have a Microsoft subscription? And if you do not leave this meeting without signing into Microsoft on your phone, download the OneDrive app, sign into Microsoft, and click camera upload, and boom, you've got your first one and you are already paying for it. I love the Amazon thing and that, but in South Africa, it doesn't, we don't get Amazon Prime and we don't have those kinds of benefits. So that's something that fits quite easily into the South African market.
Yeah, and that's, that's that piece of education, right? You're educating through your networking groups and things. Colleen asked, what about Google Photos as a backup? Do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on everything, but my feeling about Google, it's a mission to get anything out of Google. So if a client comes to me and they've only got their photos in Google, and I don't know, they've maybe done something with the ones on their phone or somewhere else, I just sort of, get a little bit tense, because you have to use Google Takeout to bring down the folders. You can't necessarily keep the structure. So Google Photos is fantastic when it comes to the AI of facial recognition, and it forms natural groups. I had a client who was a laser skin therapist. So her photos were mixed with her business and her personal, and Google Photos did a fantastic job of before and afters and being able to group them together for her. But when she came to me and she wanted her, her entire collection safely saved and backed up and sorted, it took us a really long time to get everything out of Google Photos. So I say have it there, but it's not part of my primary creating a flow system.
I would think most photo managers feel that way about Google, partly because also it mines your information, when you look at the agreements and things like that. But Amazon Photos, Dropbox app, some of those, at least would be more recommended. OneDrive, I know I'm not a PC user any longer, but I do hear lots of people love using OneDrive as a great backup.
Yeah,
and I was surprised when I worked with my first. It's a really good
backup tool, but it doesn't have fantastic. It's not brilliant for grouping things in albums and things like that.
Yeah.
So for me, if my clients have an iPhone, I definitely encourage them to use the album feature and favorites and other apps like Good Ones, where they can, make a folder where you can isolate a small group of photos that you're going to use for a specific project. But you need to have those 3 copies, don't you? So you need your 3 copies and your 2 locations, with one being offsite. And yeah, as long as you can't, that's what we're aiming to set our clients up with.
Right. Ellen asks, would you say that Apple is well represented in South Africa? MacBook, iPhone?
So Apple is, it's super popular. The phone is widely available because the cell phone networks in South Africa include, it's very common to get contracts, and the contract will include the device, and you won't feel the very expensive cost of the phones. But the computers, the laptops, the desktops, very expensive, and there are not many Apple stores themselves. So there are resellers. And it's quite a headache when it comes to after sales service, and the costs are very exorbitant. When I went to the States, I actually did purchase for myself a device over there because of how different the cost was.
Yeah, that's amazing. Any other questions that people have here? That this has been a fascinating conversation. I just love hearing your story.
We didn't cover, Kathy.
Oh, what did I miss something? What? No.
It's me. I don't think I said it. It was, one of the reasons I got into photo management was people desperate to make photo books, but oh my God, they cannot get the pictures together. It's like they want to make the books, but now where are all the photos, and how can they get them to us? So that is really what made me sort of really start with the whole photo management thing, because I love it that the other day I was sitting at the beach chatting to a friend who I hadn't seen since high school. It was a guy who I was friends with, and we happened to have gone to a school prom kind of dance together. And he said, "Oh, remember we went to that dance?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, remember." Whipped up my phone, jumped onto my OneDrive, I know exactly where it is. Boom. And I said, "Oh, look, here we are." And he was like, "What?" So, once you've got that whole system, you know how to get your photos. You can, when you go to do photo books, you can get it. People can't get their stuff. They want to make the books, but they just cannot choose the photos and get them and start the process. They're just immobilized by that.
Yeah. In many ways, the photo managers would not exist if that problem wasn't a problem that I ran into when I was first starting my business, when I was wanting to make photo books for people. And I said I had to call myself a photo organizer, because when I got hired to make the first book, I was like, well, I need a beginning, middle, and end. Because with scrapbooks and with analog photos, you could add to the photo books. But when you're making a digital photo book of any kind, it has to have an end, because you have to print it to get it. So you had to have like a format. And then I said, well, your photos need to be organized. So it's just amazing, right? I came from that same background. Randy asked, she said, "I enjoyed your recent podcast, Inside Photo Organizing, with Allison Friedman and Susan." I'm so glad that you listened to that, Randy. We should put I don't know, Kim, how fast you go find that link, but the only other photo organizing podcast that I know of, I know the only other one is DIY Photo Organizing, which is done, they're from Australia, and they just had their 100th episode. So they've been doing that for quite some time. They interview a lot of photo organizers, but they do a lot of training on DIY projects and stuff. So definitely look them up. If you're not a member, I can pull it up here. If you, the photo managers it's called the Photo Organizing Hub, and it's a Facebook group that's private in the sense that you can ask any questions that you want, and photo organizers will go in and answer your questions, but it's a no sales environment where we don't allow, except for on the first Monday of the month, we let people put, like share their kind of sales if they're things that they're selling, but otherwise we try and keep it really like not a sales environment. But they've posted their I think just yesterday, today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, yesterday I think they posted the fact that it was their 100th episode. So I just dropped that link right there, so you could certainly go and backtrack that. And
I have to say that's Chantel and Fiona, I think, and
Fiona,
it's
yeah.
really brilliant. Their podcast, I've learned so much from it.
Yeah. And yeah, and I think this, the fact that we have a second one now, I think there'll be other podcasts growing, and you mentioned different companies, good ones. So one thing that's happening with the photo managers as well is that we are connecting with so many companies that are creating the technology that to help the consumer with all the different things, whether it's their photos, whether it's videos. I see Robert Marks there, who has created a great app called Projector that people are just loving, which is a way to stream your home movies. And so we're fortunate that we get to meet a lot of these companies. We introduce them to our membership community, who can then spread the word. Because I always kind of joke with the companies when they contact us, like the average person's not sitting around right now thinking, while they're eating their lunch, oh, who's created the best, who's created a new technology or app for me to manage all my photos today? They don't know to look for it. And so it's been a great relationship for us to partner with these companies to spread the word for our own family use, right? We use a lot of these products ourselves, and then to test them out, see what works, see what doesn't, what has its like your knowledge about Google Photos compared to, that's because you've had to experiment with all that. So. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for your time. I don't think we have any more questions that come in. Natasha, thank you so much. Great job. Glad the internet stayed with us. And thank you, everybody. Hope to see you again at our next meeting. This will be up on YouTube, and we have other past interviews there that you can go back and watch different topics where we tend to ask those same questions and see what a diverse community we are. And check Natasha out, follow her on her social media channels, check out her website. Again, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.